Can Africa thrive without Western influence? Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traore, is leading a bold healthcare initiative to uplift the continent independently. But what's the endgame? 99% of the pharmaceuticals used in Burkina Faso are imported. This overwhelming dependence on foreign pharmaceutical products costs the country. The reliance on imports also makes Burkina Faso highly vulnerable to global supply chain disruptions, leaving its population at the and availability. Decisions made by multinational corporations based in far-off countries. The situation in Burkina Faso mirrors the plight of many African nations that have found themselves in similar predicaments. Decades of reliance on imported medicine have stifled the growth of local industries, leaving Africa with an underdeveloped pharmaceutical infrastructure. This dependency on imports is not just a burden on national economies, but it also perpetuates a cycle of external dependency, where African nations are forced to accept high prices, limited drug availability, and even shortages in times of crisis, such as during pandemics or geopolitical disruptions. Why is Burkina Faso so dependent on imports? The simple answer is lack of infrastructure. The country lacks the industrial capacity and technological expertise needed to produce pharmaceuticals on a large scale. Building and maintaining pharmaceutical facilities requires specialized knowledge, equipment, and significant financial investments, resources that have historically been diverted elsewhere in developing nations. Meanwhile, Big Pharma has exploited this vacuum by creating a system that benefits their profit margins while keeping developing countries dependent on their products. This is where Ibrahim Traore comes in. Recognizing the dangers of this dependency, Traore is determined to transform the healthcare landscape of Burkina Faso. It's a massive 78-hectare complex designed for the research, development, and large-scale manufacturing of pharmaceuticals. It aims to break Burkina Faso's dependency on imported drugs and empower the nation to meet its own healthcare needs. By investing in local production, Traore is making a bold statement. Burkina Faso will no longer be at the mercy of foreign corporations when it comes to life-saving medicines. This technology is not only a response to the country's immediate needs, but also a long-term strategy for economic independence. Local production will create jobs, stimulate the economy, and give Burkina Faso greater control. 307. Over drug prices and availability. Appeal to popular opinion. Traore is putting the healthcare needs of his people ahead of corporate profits, marking a significant departure from the Western aid model that has long dominated African development. But what makes Traore's vision different from other development initiatives in Africa? And how will Burkina Faso achieve self-sufficiency in the healthcare sector? In addition to drug manufacturing, the technology will focus on scientific research. Traore's government has already laid the groundwork for partnerships with African universities, medical research institutes, and international partners who share a vision of advancing healthcare on the continent. This will position Burkina Faso as a hub for pharmaceutical innovation in West Africa, attracting not only investors, but also top scientific talent from across the continent. Crucially, the Technopol's approach is holistic. Traore understands that healthcare is not just about making drugs. It's about ensuring access to healthcare for all Burkina Faso, especially those in remote areas. To that end, the government has deployed a fleet of 80 mobile clinics to serve the country's most isolated populations. These clinics are equipped with state-of-the-art diagnostic tools, enabling them to provide primary health care, diagnostics, and emergency medical services in areas where healthcare facilities are scarce. While some of the mobile clinics have faced challenges with functionality, which has sparked criticisms from opposition parties, the overall success of the initiative cannot be denied. China's involvement in Burkina Faso's healthcare sector is part of a broader strategy to expand its influence through the Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), which has seen China fund infrastructure projects from roads and bridges to power plants and ports across Africa. But now, with the establishment of the Integrated Pharmaceutical Technopole, China is positioning itself as a key partner in Africa's healthcare future. For Burkina Faso, China's support is vital. By providing the necessary medical equipment, China is helping Traore bypass traditional Western aid models, which have often been criticized for imposing onerous conditions on recipient nations. Unlike the International Monetary Fund (IMF) or the World Bank, which often tie aid and loans to specific political or economic reforms, China's investments come with fewer strings attached, allowing countries like Burkina Faso to maintain more sovereignty over their development paths. Why has the West, with its long-standing influence over Africa, failed to significantly invest in the pharmaceutical industry? For decades, Western nations have claimed to be helping Africa, providing various forms of aid, but the focus has predominantly been on the military sector. They've provided arms, military training, and defense partnerships. But when it comes to developing Africa's healthcare infrastructure, particularly the pharmaceutical industry, the West has been conspicuously absent. Why is that? The answer may lie in the West's involvement in Africa. Historically, Western powers have had strategic interests on the continent, ranging from natural resources to influence. By prioritizing military aid, the West ensured that African nations remained dependent on them for defense and security, thus maintaining a degree of control. Military aid has allowed the West to influence the internal security policies of African nations, ensuring that their political and economic interests are protected. In contrast, investing in Africa's pharmaceutical industry would have empowered African nations, giving them the tools to manage their health crises and reducing their dependency on Western aid. Pharmaceutical development is vital to any nation's long-term self-reliance. Yet the West has largely stayed out of this sector in Africa. This oversight raises serious questions about the true intentions behind their aid. Investing in pharmaceuticals would have helped Africa become less dependent on Western countries for life-saving drugs, vaccines, and medical infrastructure. It would have promoted local production of essential medicines, enabling Africa to manage its healthcare crises without having to rely on expensive imports from the West. But that kind of independence might have diminished the West's leverage over African nations. And while the West accuses China of taking advantage of African nations, it's worth noting that China is investing in areas the West never prioritized, areas that can lead to real development and independence for African nations. The West's reluctance to invest in Africa's pharmaceutical sector speaks volumes about its true intentions. Military aid ensures that African nations remain dependent and vulnerable to external influence, while pharmaceutical and healthcare investments would have fostered independence and self-reliance. China, by contrast, has stepped into the healthcare space, challenging the Western narrative of help by providing the kind of assistance that Africa truly needs. As Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traore pushes forward with his healthcare initiative, one must ask, why did it take so long for a major power to recognize the importance of supporting Africa's healthcare system? And why was it China, not the West, that answered the call? Anyways, we all know why. So, to sum this up, President Ibrahim Traore'S bold initiative to challenge Big Pharma and build a self-sufficient healthcare system in Burkina Faso could mark the beginning of a healthcare revolution across Africa. Through the creation of the Integrated Pharmaceutical Technopole, Traore is positioning his country to take control of its healthcare future, while also setting an example for other African nations to follow. With support from key allies like China and a focus on locally driven healthcare solutions, Burkina Faso's efforts could inspire a continent-wide movement towards self-reliance, breaking free from the long-standing dependence on Western pharmaceutical companies. While the road ahead will undoubtedly be filled with challenges, particularly from Big Pharma's expected pushback, Burkina Faso's leadership appears determined to forge ahead. The stakes are high, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the future of healthcare across Africa. Could this be the moment when Africa finally takes control of its healthcare destiny? Do you think Free from West Burkina Faso is coming back on track? Let us know in the comments section. Will the West try to help Africa now that it's too late? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it.